And welcome back to the program. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's time for our Sunday live interview. And as I mentioned earlier, joining me now in studio is Public Service, Youth and Gender Cabinet Secretary Sicily Kariuki. Welcome to the program. How about we start with the question of youth affairs and the NYS program specifically. It's been seen as a key and yet controversial docket. You have taken over that. In what state did you find it? Because it was left bedeviled with, corruption allegations, etc.
Thank you, Anne, for having me this evening in studio. I took up my current appointment on the 18th of December. I came into an institution which was ridiculed with a lot of shame and burden of proving that Kenya, and indeed the government, is able to overcome corruption. And I came into an institution where it was common knowledge that money, public money, had been misappropriated. I came into a ministry which had made a promise to young Kenyans on behalf of the government. But I came into a ministry which I was expected to turn this into hope, to put in structures, to be able to interpret the vision that the president has for the youth and begin to run with it.
What structures were missing?
So far what I have taken is that the financial management systems and structures were not adequate. If they were, then would not have gotten into the loss that we got into. I got into a situation where also the project was extremely ambitious, given that there was a weak foundation, financial structure foundation, then one would begin to appreciate why there was a loss that was incurred. But I also came into an institution where in-depth investigations had already commenced, and therefore there was hope that we would be able to appropriate blame where it was necessary, and that we'll be able to pick up the pieces in the shortest time possible, organize the structures, get the teams to run with it, and get going. And that is what I've been working on. Right.
And I'll get to the structures that you're putting in place, but we've just actually run a report on EACC basically saying that they have cleared your predecessor, the former CS Anwar Igoro, of any wrongdoing in as far as the NYS losses are concerned. I wonder if you, because you're talking about proper investigations, believing you were going to be in a position to, appropriate blame accordingly. Are you privy to that particular report of EACC?
Unfortunately not, and my request to His Excellency the President was that I shouldn't lose too much time focusing on what was already happening that had gone wrong, because the other arms of government were already running with the investigations. And for me, it's because if I focused on what had gone wrong, yet I'm not the investigative authority, I was going to lose a bit of time there, and I was going also to lose a lot of energy. So for me was to go in, interrogate the structures which were there, investigate the teams that were supposed to deliver, and be able to then come up with interventions to deal with the gaps and move forward. So
you don't get any status briefings on where the investigations are in as far as the NYS scam is concerned?
To the extent that they are going on, and that everything is on course, and that they still require little information here and there, and that I've been providing. Okay. But as to how they are dealing with the culprits or the people that were implicated, I allow them, because this, I think, is the best thing to do.
What about the lost millions? Have any been recovered, returned? Would you know?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of.
No.
Okay, so you've talked about restructuring, and specifically when it comes to the finance management, what structures have you now put in?
First thing is that I came into a space where the internal audit controls, the procurement structures, the financial management processes, like I said, were really wanting, in the sense that the persons involved in terms of numbers really weren't there. I also came into a space where if I looked at the pricing and what was happening, again, there wasn't too much referencing to what the market was for a particular item, and I've had to institutionalize that. As you will note, I have also made some changes just so that I am given the space to be able to get started on a clean slate and be able to get the information that I require to be able to make decisions. But more importantly as well is that the issues of having information availed real time on the ICT platform, for example, a lot of data was manual. A lot of decisions were made on information that was manual, on paper. And what you have seen in the latest period when we went back to register the youth, I did direct that this must be on biometric system, so that then I have the data and you cannot tamper with that. But when it's walking all over on loose pieces of paper, it becomes very, very risky.
And so as far as you're concerned right now, any loopholes for the siphoning of public funds have been sealed in as far as NYS is concerned?
It's work in progress, Anne. It's work in progress. First, you have to do the diagnostic. You have to understand where the gaps are really. And since it was across the board, from procurement processes, financial, HR-related issues of even fleet management, and there is a big asset base there. It's work in progress. Gaps have been identified, and we are dealing with these as we move along.
You wouldn't be able to say for sure that no more money is being siphoned from NYS from the previous regime that was there?
What I did when I came in as a starting point was that I froze all payments. That was a starting point for me to be able then to go inside and understand where the gaps were. The second thing for me was there were suppliers and a lot of unpaid pending bills that were due to be paid. I put in an independent team to be able to verify each one of those claims that were pending. It's work in progress. I have isolated that which went through proper processes and can be paid, and that which may not be paid, and consulting with other arms of government, then we'll make a decision. So that has taken a bit of time, but I think it was important that we verify each and every payment.
Okay. And when do you think that will be done? The conclusion of that process? I
really think my target is in the coming 2 weeks we should be able to pay what is clean and has been isolated and all the documentation is not in question. I do think within the same 2 weeks I will be consulting with other arms of government to be able to then understand how you deal with some of the the bills which are pending, which in my view the internal team which are put together is still questioning, and then we'll take appropriate action in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, and the President also says end of the month he expects all NYS projects to be back up and running. Where do you intend to begin, and when do you see it rolling out countrywide?
Good. On the 18th of January, the President gave his directive that in 2 months from that day, we need to be back and running with all the processes, given that now we have, if you will, remedied the gaps that we have identified. I do intend that in that period, 2 months from the time given, that is the middle of March, we will be back relaunching the programs. I also do intend within the same time we'll be doing the pass-out parade for the recruits in Gilgil. And
this project in its initial stages was seen as political, the areas in which it was rolled out, etc. And even now, the determination to have it back on course with a general election not too far away is also, seen as, questionable timing. Do you see any politics around the program that you're running?
I really don't think so, Anne. We have a youth population which is about 70% of the unemployed population in this country. If any intervention would help these youth going forward, I don't think we want to play politics with that, because whether it happens next year, 2017, whether it happened 2013 or 2014, somebody was going to make a comment, and I think really this should not stop us from delivering for the youth.
Okay. I want to wind up on the NYS, but with the question on the youth savings. A portion of their money was to be put into SACCOs, and it was envisioned that then, these youth groups could decide to go into whatever form of business that they wanted. But we saw protests at the beginning of the year, youth saying that they want their individual remittances. I believe by January they were talking the figure of about 12,000 shillings per person. Are there plans? How exactly first can youth access the SACCO monies? How much has been saved? And can one youth say, I was part of NYS, I have pulled out of the project, and now I want to access my individual savings, and then that money is given to them?
Good observation. Let me start by assuring the youth whose money was deducted for purposes of saving that upwards of 950 million shillings deducted from the youth across the country in the 69 constituencies is safe. Let me confirm that 133 SACCOs have so far been registered, and that money is, half of that money is with these SACCOs. The balance, and I wish to state to the youth that it's safe in a special account. Part of the interventions that I took when I came in, and I opened a special account, and that money is safe in there, waiting for registration of SACCOs for these youth, for this money to be moved on.
And where is this special account held?
KCB is a KCB account.
And if
under the ministry.
Under the ministry.
And NYS, yes.
Right. And so if a SACCO group wanted to independently verify that money is actually there, and how would they go about that?
Well, I'm happy for them to get statements from our office.
Okay.
If they should choose to do that. But let me come back to the other issue you raised in terms of individuals moving on and wanting to withdraw money. The principle of saving this money and getting the youth to actually save this money is because when we move into a community, Korogocho or wherever it is, we move with the youth. We are doing a couple of things with our intervention. One is to capacity build the youth to make them unplayable. Number two, it is also to engage the youth to be able to be useful to the communities within which they live. Number three, it's for the youth to be able to be self-reliant and instill an entrepreneurial culture. And savings is a component of that, because when we move off, then we expect the youth to carry on and create an economy around themselves for a better livelihood. So it wouldn't be in my interest for me to encourage any of the youths to want to withdraw the money individually, because we see a situation where communities have a better bargaining and they have an advantage of scale and scope as well.
But perchance somebody says, look, I'm no longer interested. I got the training that I wanted to get from NYS, etc. I'm done. I had this amount of money. Now I want my money back. Can they get it?
They would, but I would encourage them to hang on. And that's why we recruit the youth from a community, because that's where they belong. Because even if they got another job and moved away, they still have a relationship with the community where they first belong. And therefore encourage them. And I think looking on how to take the youth forward, we must instill in them entrepreneurial skills. And we must also encourage the saving skill.
Yeah, and let's now switch gears to the Women and Youth Funds. How much money has been disbursed under this particular administration in as far as the Women's Fund is concerned?
The Women Funds alone, we have disbursed 7.5 billion shillings in the last 2.5 years.
Okay.
The other affirmative fund, which is Youth Enterprise Development Fund, has done a lot better than that. We have disbursed 10 billion shillings. We also have the third affirmative fund, that is Uwezo. Again, we have disbursed upwards of 4.5 billion shillings. Total over 21 billion shillings.
And how many businesses would you say have benefited from that? Or is it individuals, perhaps?
No, directly we have touched upwards of 350,000 SACCOs in these three interventions.
Okay.
The total impact touches upwards of 1.2 million families in Kenya today.
And what is the repayment like? Because the concern is always, you know, will people be able to pay back these funds?
Above average would be my observation across the board. We have a few cases of perhaps businesses that didn't perform too well for the startups, really. We have a few, really who fell off, the groups that come together fell off. We're trying to put together a program to rehabilitate these groups, because we still believe in group dynamics in terms of also the social and economic impact in a space.
Above average, could you give us a figure? What would that be?
Yes. Say Youth Enterprise Development Fund
repayment
is upwards of 75% overall, which is good.
Okay.
Women Enterprise Fund has done phenomenally well. You are looking at 90+ in terms of performance. Wezo is also in the range of 75–80%, which is also very good.
And you're saying that you will no longer be using banks as financial intermediaries, largely I think because of the interest that they levy on these funds. Well, the government pays it out, I think, at 1%, gives it out at 1%. So what is your option? What other intermediary will you use?
Part of the concept of these affirmative funds is also to create capacity and establish circles within the communities where we are supporting. And the circles themselves that have been capacity build are a good avenue right now. And actually, Women Enterprise Fund, we are giving the money through the circles.
Giving it to
form circle, yes.
So,
who then on lend to the members.
All right. So one can no longer access these funds from the banks.
I will be having a conversation separately with the banks to see that they do not charge the 80% that they've been charging, because then we negate the import of an affirmative fund. I'm having a conversation with the banks.
Okay, so that's not yet final.
It's not final yet, but right now there is no money that's going to the banks, as it were. But we'll have a conversation, because we will also want a better penetration, because you know where the circles reach is not necessarily where the banks reach.
All right. I want to conclude with women's issues specifically, because you're the Gender Affairs Cabinet Secretary, and violence against women continues at alarming rates in the country. Just in this 1 month and few days, we've seen two of the most horrific reports of gender-based violence. A woman being stabbed in the cheek in, I believe, Wajir, is it, in January. Just last week we were talking about a pregnant woman being beaten by her husband. It is 2016. There are laws in place. In the absence of the public actually listening and protecting their women, and the president has launched, you know, a campaign with the United Nations and all of that. What practically can your ministry do to protect women?
Couple of things running all at the same time. One, I think we must remind ourselves there are laws, and if you break laws, there are consequences as well. And that's why you see some of these people being arrested. Yesterday, as I spoke during the International Day to mark the zero tolerance on FGM, I reminded us that we have 100 men currently who have actually been put in behind the bars because of cutting women against their will. And so we must remind ourselves that there are laws and we must follow the law. But more importantly, I think we must also engage with the victims. We must sensitize the women that it is not decent anymore for you to allow yourself to be beaten, because really it takes your dignity away. But number three, and perhaps more fundamental, is that we must empower our women, because a lot of the women who are being beaten have no economic means, and they remain here. You are kicked today, tomorrow you really remain there because you do have no way of getting out and you know, fending for yourself. So the affirmative funds, one of the objectives was actually to empower women so that, you know, if you're kicked today, you can get off and still be able to fend for your children. So we must continue to avail the resources for these women, to help them, capacity build them, educate them, give them the economic opportunities, so that then, you know, this ceases to be. But we have to have a conversation with the men as well. There are those who beat their women. There are those who force their daughters to be cut because it is traditional and culturally the right thing to do. We must have a conversation that is no longer constitutional. Actually, the Constitution forbids that, and we'll continue to have that. But
a new narrative is out there as we wind up, and it is that it is the girls who are asking for the cut. You hear this a lot in communities that are still practicing FGM. Do you buy into that narrative? And because we have been talking and talking and talking about it, and it still continues, what really can end it? Do you see an end in sight?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but it's not a switch on, switch off, plug and play sort of situation. And it is true, in some communities the girls have been told, if you don't do this, you're not marriageable. If you don't do this, and on and on, and you'll not go to heaven. You know, all these manner of things. And so you see girls ending up going that way because of the pressure that has been put to them. And we have to have a conversation with the girls as well. But we have to be a little bit more innovative. The girls who have escaped the cut from these communities but must be the ones to go back and decide for this. The men who marry the girls really must be the ones to go back and say, you know, we no longer desire women who have been cut and these on the other. So we have to be a bit more ingenious even as we do our traditional sensitization around the matter. And there's hope, because if you see the figures are coming down, there's hope that over time we'll overcome.
Madam CS, certainly my hope it is. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we're taking a short break. It's Sunday Live. We're back with the sports news and much more after this. Don't go away.